everyone. Here I am under this beautiful fig tree, sheltering here because today it's very windy and I hope you will hear me clearly. So I'm happy to be back with you for sharing my insights for the Aquarius new moon, which is quite significant because it's also an annular solar eclipse happening today, just today, the 17th of February at 10 p.m. Brisbane time, Australia. And she's sitting at 28 degrees, 49 minutes of Aquarius. Well, a new moon is always a moment when the sun and the moon are in the same place, conjunct in the sky, looking in the same direction. And here in Aquarius, this speaks of ideas of freedom, a vision of the future. Aquarius is here to open a mental door, one we had not considered, even if that door is a little unsettling. And yet, this new moon is anything but cold because she's accompanied by Mars, planet Mars, and Pluto, which brings a vibrant reflection, a desire to act differently, as if an inner voice were gently saying, I can't continue as before. This eclipse in Aquarius wants you to wake up to the fact that you are playing a role that no longer suits you. She announces a pivotal moment, which is neither an end nor a beginning. It is a blurry zone. It is not a time when you ask yourself what you should create, but rather what you can no longer continue to do in the same way. This new moon in Aquarius is also an annular solar eclipse. So we have a powerful event here. The effect of an eclipse lasts for 6 months until the next eclipse, which will take place in the sign of Leo on the 12th of August. So before we go further in our exploration, I invite you to look in your birth chart to see which houses are occupied by the signs of Aquarius and Leo. And it is in these areas of your life that you are the most impacted by this strong lunation that initiate a need for independence or a rebalancing to be carried out around the question of independence, freedom, and a reharmonization in your life. This new moon invites you to plant a new seed with the aim of change, but a change that means awakening something within you, and that is very important. The new moon is the birth of a new cycle, and with the eclipse, something deep within you is gradually emerging into the light. Thanks to the situation you will encounter, situation you are already facing, situations that confront you with this inner transformation. This change, in a way, is nothing other than the emergence of an identity within you, shedding its old layers, a dimension of your being to which you have not yet had access, and which, thanks to the transformation you are facing, will come to your consciousness. And the collective context further accentuates this feeling because 3 days later, after this eclipse, Saturn and Neptune will meet in Aries at the vernal equinox, opening a new 36-year historical cycle. So this lunar cycle does not just set the mood, it prepares for a much broader shift, whether in narratives, the structures, and the directions we set for ourselves, individually and collectively. Amazingly, this new moon sits at 28 degrees 49 minutes of Aquarius, and I'm very curious to see which Sabian symbol is associated with the 29 degree of Aquarius. Because when we look at a Sabian symbol, we always round the degree up to the next whole degree. So the 29 Sabian degree of Aquarius tells us a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Amazing. When the butterfly comes from his confinement in the chrysalis, it can't be helped. He must make the struggle successfully on his own. Moments pass, and then in one last huge effort, the butterfly emerges free and hanging wings downward. And gradually the wings flatten and expand. The leg and other body parts harden. And then, in that long-awaited moment, the glorious colors flash and the butterfly soars, dancing in the air and moves away. Beautiful story. This 29-degree symbol represents a profound transformation of consciousness and highlights the capacity to radically alter your lifestyle, the structural patterns and relationships. It signifies a moment of metamorphosis and emerging into a new, higher form of life. You leave behind an old, restrictive form to embrace a new existence, new habits. This is perhaps the end of an old relationship patterns, but trust that a new, more liberated self emerges into the world. This is an opportunity to achieve a more authentic way of being. When the butterfly is emerging from a chrysalis, he has just finished the completion, changing from the caterpillar that he was into the winged creature that he is going to be. Still the same being, but certain DNA strands turned off and some turned on. Now, the struggle to get out of the chrysalis is real. If he does not struggle quite enough, the butterfly gets trapped in there. But if he fights just right, he comes out and is straightened as he gets out of the chrysalis. So this 29-degree symbol speaks of an extremely precise moment, an evolutionary process. It doesn't describe a transformation in progress, but a completed one. So when the butterfly emerges from this chrysalis, well, there is no going back. The old state is gone. The 29 degrees, therefore, speaks of a point of no return. So metamorphosis is a key word of this degree. It is not a gradual improvement, nor a linear evolution. It's more a change in nature. We don't become a better version of ourselves. We become someone else. In Aquarius, this metamorphosis is not solely personal. It is transpersonal, so it concerns the place we occupy within a larger whole, within collective representations, ideals, vision of the future. Certain ideas with which we identify can reach saturation because they have fulfilled their function. They no longer allow us to evolve, and clinging to them can become a form of confinement. So this 29 degree of Aquarius speaks of a complete renewal. It indicates that what changes is not only your way of doing or acting, but your way of being, your mental identity, your relationship to freedom, to belonging to the collective. So the critical moment here is the emergence. The instant the butterfly emerges marks something other than formation. It marks exposure to the world, entry into reality, and above all, the immediate learning of this new condition. So what is at stake is not becoming a butterfly, but accepting being a butterfly, outside the shell, outside the inner self. And the transition is so radical that it requires a period of appropriation, The transformation is complete, but its embodiment is still taking place. You know something has changed, but you don't know yet how to translate it into action, into decision. And that is precisely what this 29 degree of Aquarius is saying. There is no point of return, yes, but there is also this fragile moment where you leave the old inner world to live in an external world that has not yet adjusted to who you have become. So this new moon eclipse brings a phase of integration. We could also speak of initiation here, like entering a broader, more demanding sphere of consciousness, one that implies greater responsibility, lucidity, and sometimes also a feeling of disconnect or loneliness. So this 29 degree of Aquarius announces an irreversible shift in consciousness, and this shift can't be measured immediately. It will unfold over time, often through adjustments, renunciations, realignments, and the question it poses is not that what you are going to become, but how do you live now that you are no longer who you were? So this eclipse demands lots of inner work and some struggle as well. You don't get stronger unless you do some body exercises, some mental preparations. This is a fascinating transformative period, and everything that goes on the weeks before, the few weeks before and after this eclipse is absolutely important. Anyway, trust the process, trust the transformation. All the changes don't have to happen at once, because they don't. Just give yourself that opportunity to really feel what you are pushing through. Honor what you have been struggling through. That gives you the resilience that you need. And really embrace this new cycle that is waiting for you. It is an important cycle for you, for me, for all of us to experience. At this new moon in Aquarius, this new moon is ruled by two planets, Uranus in Taurus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, and Saturn in Aries, the traditional ruler. And at this point in the cycle, they are both in detrimental signs, the signs of their fall, and that symbolically is major. And the fundamental conversation of this new moon is a tense waning square, almost exact, with Uranus in Taurus. A waning square is not a direct external shock. It is a tense awakening, something you can no longer ignore internally, that forces you to readjust your way of thinking, your choices, your direction. And here it occurs between the signs of Aquarius and Taurus. Therefore, between the future you imagine and the material reality in which you live. Uranus in Taurus is shaking up your foundation, your securities, everything tangible and alive. And this new moon square Uranus shows you that it is no longer just matter that is shifting, but the way you think about it. That certain ideas about stability, security, about what reassures you, well, they are no longer compatible with the future you are trying to build. There is a gap, an inner tension between what you want to project and what reality imposes. Excuse me. This square symbolizes a tension, the need to evolve and the fear of losing what is reassuring. And this tension is there to reveal what has become too rigid and where you can't continue to live the same way. Uranus has resumed its direct motion since February the 4th This is his final stretch in the sign of Taurus, and he will enter Gemini on the 26th of April. So from the 4th of February to April the 26th, the energy is very different and is beginning to take shape, completing the work of Uranus in Taurus over the past 7 years. Therefore, consider what has happened in your life over these past 7 years. All the transformations that have taken place. And in April, we move on to something else, but you can already get involved, for example, in a new group, a new collective which has nothing to do with your past affiliations. And this may destabilize you at first, but it is to bring forth something within you that you had not imagined. You are now moving toward new territories. So here, there is a necessary adaptation to a new group, new ideas, new relational concepts, which will evolve. Uranus is the awakener, so there may be sudden realizations, some aha moments, unexpected changes. There is a need for, or a necessity to break with the past, to formulate an intention for radical change, for self-expression, which must manifest in reality, in your existence, and which will reintroduce a life force. And yet, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, is in Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac wheel. So we are putting an end to stagnant patterns. We are abandoning them. It is necessary, and willingly or unwillingly, you may be forced to. You may feel you no longer have a choice. And above all, you can't go back. So during this lunation, there may be blockages, obstacles hindering the possibility of creating connections. For example, and yet you will be confronted with a form of imbalance. For example, you might have unexpected encounters far from your usual circles, which will propel you towards a new environment. In fact, this new moon eclipse shakes you up. She awakens wounds of identity, but also fears related to abandonment, to the loss of a secure point of reference, and also attachments based on fears that hold back this new momentum which flows through you, whether you like it or not. So fears can resurface and even create a kind of panic. You feel the need to break free, and yet habits, attachments keep you in a past of some kind. Relational, professional, friendly, leisure, health-related. There are many attachments holding you back. Taurus is ruled by Venus, so behind this new moon square with Uranus looms the question of values, desire, what you love, what you truly hold dear. Uranus in Taurus does not break things for the sake of breaking them, but it forces you to redefine what truly has value, what deserves to be preserved, and what must be transformed. So we are forced to go through the material world, the body, the resources, the values, basically everything concrete in resonance with Venus and Taurus. Here, direct Uranus restarts a movement, but on unstable ground. So changes resume, but they affect reality and sometimes with brutality. So we can no longer postpone certain transformation, but they still encounter strong resistance, both internal and external. So this square aspect acts as an inner turning point. It won't necessarily trigger spectacular events in each of our lives immediately, perhaps nothing will happen, but it will force us one way or another to recognize that certain mental or material securities no longer hold. So this Uranus new moon square invites you to great vigilance because yes, it is a question of values, of meaning, of solidarity, of compassion, but not at the price of a denial of life, not at the price of a blind sacrifice or in the name of an ideal that disregards concrete reality. And if we look at Saturn, the traditional ruler of Aquarius, he has just entered Aries on the 14th of February, and there too he is in his fall. Saturn in Aries must initiate, decide, act, and sometimes without insights. So he is forced to operate in a state of emergency without a solid pre-existing framework. And now he's been asked to take on new responsibilities, but without guarantees, without security, without a perfectly established plan. So all of this shows that the usual reference points associated with Aquarius no longer hold true. The ideals, the systems of thought, the vision of the future to which we clung, here they can no longer rely on comfortable structures. Now you are invited to invent differently, to think differently, but in a context of fragility, uncertainty, and inevitably disorientation. And that is where the eclipse nature of this new moon becomes central. Because an annular solar eclipse is not simply an amplified new moon. It is a partial suspension of consciousness. You have to understand that something is happening here without you having a clear vision of it at the time. So you plant a seed, but you don't know yet what it will actually produce. The choices made around an eclipse aren't always fully conscious. But on the other side, they have lasting effects. So this phase does not require you to know exactly where you are going, at least not yet. That said, you are being asked to accept that the old future, the one you imagined, the one you mentally identified with, well, it no longer works. And naturally, this invites you to let go of certainties, projections, to enter a zone of experimentation, because Aquarius speaks of experimentation and of freedom. But here it is a freedom without a safety net, a freedom that forces you to reinvent yourself without any guarantees of success or results. So are you ready to build the future even though frameworks are wavering, internal and external authority is weakened, and the vision is not yet stable? We can't expect clear answers right away here. We are in a phase of openness, so it is a space for questioning, repositioning, making choices, sometimes uncomfortable, but profoundly necessary for the rest of our journey. And Saturn will unite with Neptune in Aries precisely on the 20th of February, just 3 days after this eclipse. It is a rare and pivotal aspect that occurs every 36 years. In other words, this eclipse immediately opening onto a major 36 years collective cycle involves much more than individual dynamics here. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction always marks periods of dissolution of existing structures. Neptune dissolves, blurs, erases reference points, narratives, dominant ideologies, and Saturn, for its part, seeks to structure, to organize, to give a lasting and concrete form. So when these two meet, we inevitably witness the end of an old receptacle of meaning with the simultaneous need to build new ones. Therefore, this conjunction in Aries at the 0 degree, the vernal equinox point, is an absolute beginning. Aries speaks of initiative, birth, vital energy, decision, and so at this first degree of the zodiac, there is not yet any insights, any maturity. Here, we will act before understanding. We initiate before knowing where it leads us. So this can give this cycle a very particular character because it is not simply a matter of rethinking the world, but of launching new narratives through action. Even if these narratives are still vague, unstable, and fragile. Saturn here cannot yet rely on existing solid structures. So he will be forced to invent, to try, sometimes to make mistakes. And Neptune, for its part, will disseminate an ideal of action, courage, and renewal, but without any guarantee of immediate coherence. So this new moon eclipse in Aquarius evokes a powerful time, the initiation of a new movement, which is a transmutation or of your consciousness. That is why you risk being surprised and destabilized by what you encounter. And with Uranus in Taurus and now in direct mode, it is potentially a world related to your values. Everything that falls under the realm of Venus, the ruler of Taurus. And that is where the contrast becomes very strong, because we have a new moon in Aquarius, which is a cold, conceptual, sometimes dehumanized sign, which thinks of the collective from a distance. And we have Uranus in Taurus, which is uneasy, in fall, which tries to transform life into a forced march. And in the background, we have Venus in Pisces, which offers a radically different, but no less problematic response. And Venus in Pisces is exactly conjunct the North Node. She speaks of a subtle readjustment of values, of what attracts you, what you consider important. You gradually release the need to control everything, to relearn to listen to intuition and sensitivity. So you will become more aware of all patterns that have become illusory. They belong to the past. The Venus-North Node conjunction indicates an evolutionary direction towards more meaning, more compassion, more connection, to redefine your values on a less materialistic level. It is a call to love differently, to desire differently, to value what cannot be measured. Venus in Pisces is strong because she's exalted in this sign, and she speaks of unconditional love and the dissolution of boundaries. So here, she does not operate through material attachment or concrete security as she does when she's in Taurus. But in Pisces, it is more through empathy, fusion, and ideals. She's capable of loving beyond forms, beyond limits, even beyond logics. But like every sign and planets, she has a shadow. And then she can be extremely delicate. She can become sacrificial. She can confuse love with renunciation, compassion with self-effacement, idealism with blindness. And in conjunction to the North Node, this risk is not only individual, it is collective as well. The North Node demands letting go, but this letting go must not become a loss of boundaries. And that is where this new moon eclipse comes in, because she poses the question of how far is it to sacrifice yourself in the name of collective ideals, in the name of the future, in the name of the common goods? And above all, who defines this sacrifice? Aquarius is about the future, and that future you envisioned based on past relationships, whether thoughts, situations, or people, well, it is over. So now you are destabilized because the future you envisioned won't happen, because now everything is being called into question. We are starting from scratch. This new identity that is emerging is an important process over the next 6 months. Because let's not forget that we are in eclipse season. Uranus in Taurus reminds us of something fundamental, that life has limits, the body has limits, resources too, so we cannot transform reality nor human beings as we transform a concept. Saturn, the traditional ruler of the Aquarius sign, and this new moon is in Aries, ruled by Mars in Aquarius. So during this lunar cycle, Mars does not really have a dialogue with the other celestial bodies. We might perhaps accept a broader conjunction with this new moon, but personally I sense that Mars feels isolated here, and this is a crucial point. His capacity to act is there, but is not yet aligned nor integrated into a coherent whole. Mars in Aquarius acts in a way cerebral, ideological, sometimes detached from feelings. So he may want to act in the name of ideas, principles, concepts, a collective vision. But here he receives no direct support, and that describes the current climate very well. So action during this new moon eclipse timeline risks being fragmented, hesitant, sometimes disconnected from reality. And above all, it doesn't take into account the limits reminded by Uranus in Taurus and the vigilance demanded by Venus. Now, if we look at Mercury, which is preparing its retrograde phase in Pisces, from the 26th of February to the 20th of March. Here in Pisces, Mercury is simultaneously in exile and in fall. In other words, the usual markers of rational thought, logical analysis, and mental clarity, well, all of that no longer functions as usual. Thought become porous, intuitive, sensitive, sometimes blurry. Here we perceive more than we understand, and we feel more than we explain. And what is interesting is that Mercury will remain in Pisces for a long time. He entered Pisces on the 6th of February, and he won't leave until mid-April because of his retrograde phase. So it is not a simple passage, it is a prolonged immersion in a mental climate where the certainties dissolve, and words sometimes fail to express what is transforming. Therefore, this retrograde motion will strongly amplify the processes of introspection, questioning, and inner re-examination. So this is not a Mercury for making quick decisions, making clean breaks, or structuring effectively. It is a Mercury that compels you to revisit narratives, to question what you thought was obvious, to recognize that certain explanations are no longer satisfactory. And here again, we find these ideas of the end of an old language, like an old way of thinking about reality. And Mercury in Pisces is in an harmonious dialogue, a waning trine to retrograde Jupiter in Cancer. And this trine conversation indicates a moment where it is essential to slow down thinking, not to try to understand everything immediately, not to jump to conclusion too quickly, because with Mercury in Pisces, words can be deceptive and discourses can be seductive but incomplete. So intellectual certainties here are fragile. It is a time to hear what is whispered between the lines. Retrograde Jupiter draws us back to the past, to emotional memory, to patterns of protection, emotional, familial, and collective security. So this dialogue can create a fluid but declining flow. It is between thought and feeling, between the mental and the emotional. And it is not a conversation geared towards external expansion or grand announcements. It is an aspect of rereading of internal digestion. So here, you are led to understand what you feel, but also why you feel it. So you can revisit all stories, all beliefs, all emotional reflexes to see if they still make sense in the current context. And then the fact that Jupiter is in Cancer under the rulership of this new moon eclipse in Aquarius, it's very telling. It shows that even if this new moon occurs in the core conceptual sign of Aquarius, the emotional background is extremely present. The decision, the choices, the mental questioning is deeply colored by the need for security, belonging, and protection. So, in summary, this new moon brings a kind of ending, an energy of renewal, transformation, an energy of independence, even rebellion. It will be necessary to demonstrate self-control, perspective, and reflection, so that emotions don't take over and generate an irreversible impulse. So caution is advised, and what you will need to contain are excesses, outbursts, even deviations. So you will need to keep a cool head and exercise your discernment to avoid taking reckless risks and making premature, unprepared decisions without having organized everything. This new moon annular eclipse brings a major upheaval, a significant shift which will be felt very strongly over the next 6 months. She opens the heart of February. It's like a portal marking the vibrational entry into the year of the fire horse, a horse full of speed, independence, and passion. But beware, for it is also a year full of highly flammable energy, and linked to Pluto in Aquarius, latent tensions rise to the surface. And linked to Mars in Aquarius, it is a year where you boldly take the plunge. So walk through the fire, but don't get burned. You won't get burned if you have a direction. So master your inner fire. Breathe, be present and grounded within yourself, and follow your plan and your direction. And if this video has helped you better understand the symbolism of this new moon solar eclipse, you can like and subscribe to support my YouTube channel, Françoise, the Guiding Star. And for having a personal reading with me, please send me a message, a text on Messenger, it works well, or an email at info@francoisemonroe360art.au. Thank you for listening. I wish you a very beautiful new moon, and I will see you very soon. May we all walk the trail of our heart with love and light.